Good afternoon. If we could ask everyone to be seated, we're going to start in just a couple of moments. Thank you.
Welcome to this gathering to remember and celebrate the life of Harriet Yelvington Worrell. We are here in this space that Harriet developed and loved to share memories, to express gratitude, and to take comfort in one another's presence. This is our time to say goodbye and thank you to a woman who was deeply respected and dearly loved. Let us pray. Creator of life and art, we thank you for the life and art of Harriet Worrell. Thank you for her integrity, her creativity, her love, and her courage. Thank you for her fierce commitment to excellence and her gentle commitment to those she loved. Make this theater a sacred space for tears and laughter, for silence and for true words. Amen.
So if you were in Yo Theater and you have done warm-ups before, maybe you can stand up. Or if you've seen warm-ups before and your kids have participated in warm-ups. Warm-ups were a huge part of the ensemble. And the ensemble was everything. So we're going to do a few warm-ups, very light. We're not going to run. Just shake out your arms. Roll back your shoulders. Let your heads fall. We learned that this one there was a lot of neck injury, so go gentle on it. Alright, and spin shields if you need them. Let the lips out. A-E-I-O, 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 A-E-I-O. Tintinnabulation, everyone? You all know? Okay. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time to a sort of brilliant rhyme, to the tintinnabulation of the bells, 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 bells.
After the main cruise that was over here, cheer. So if anybody is familiar with the cheer and wants to stand up, please do. Stand up, I think you know it. Hey parent, yeah. Hey parent, yeah. Show me how to get down.
No way.
Show me how to get down.
Okay. Jump, shake your booty. Jump, jump, shake your booty. Jump, shake your booty. Jump, jump, shake your booty.
Hey yo. Yeah. Hey yo.
Yeah.
Show me how to get down.
No way.
Show me how to get down.
Okay. Jump, shake your booty. Jump, jump, shake your booty. Jump, shake your booty. Jump, jump, shake your booty. Around, we like to shake it on down and do up the Charlie Brown. We like to shake our rumps and do the bumps. We like to paddle our boats and do up the backstrokes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to stand off the side because it's probably pretty evident for those that know me, know that I probably don't need this mic. It's beautiful to be back here on stage. It's beautiful to be back here in this place where so many of us who had voices had the opportunity to find our voices under the direction of Harriet Worrell. And as my brother was leading the warm-ups, I think I was holding it pretty good together until he paused and got a bit emotional listening to you all go through that rhyme. And so, excuse me if I get a little bit emotional. I do have a handkerchief right here that won't disintegrate if I do get a bit emotional. In the early 90s, the O Masters did a production by the name of Songs from Swansea, an evening of Dylan Thomas. And in that program, which I happen to have here, there was a director's note where Harriet talked about the genius of Dylan Thomas. She also, in her last sentence, asked that this poetry be read over her grave because of the comfort that it would provide her. And so, in a prelude to reading some Dylan Thomas, I want to read to y'all that director's note. But I also want to change some of the personal pronouns that were used in that director's note because I think Harriet was talking about herself. She said, "Here was a woman whose language and images rattled literary cages and sent traditions reeling. No one could copy her unruly patterns or her surrealistic images. It is, of course, impossible to mimic genius, and for many, it was just as difficult to admit that it existed in Harriet. She was too inexperienced, too remarkable, good too soon. But there she was, just the same warbling Texan whose uncanny way with words turned all of our poetic expectation about and upward to sheer glory. I'll have his poetry as she read over my grave in comfort to me to know that this will happen." Do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men, at their end, no dark is right, because their words are forked no lightning day, do not go gentle into that good night. Good men the last wave by, crying how bright. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun of flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my Father, there, on that sad height, curse bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel very blessed to have great brothers and sisters, and to have been blessed by the lives of Chuck and Harriet Worrell. So to the Worrell family, thanks for the opportunity. To you all, I hope you found your voice like I found my voice. And I hope that angels will be with us, and I hope they'll be with Harriet and Chuck as they reunite. Thank you.
Let's sing together, "The World Is Not My Home."
I am going to use the mic. So most of you who know my mother know of her father, Yelvington, and the play that he wrote called A Cloud of Witnesses. My mother was in the performance once herself, and then directed it 3 times within her career, 2 of them here at Woodstock. This is typically done in a chorus. As you notice, I am solo, but I will try and do it justice in the chorus way. At the foot of the cross of the crucified Christ, there were those who were impressed. No more, no less impressed. Oh, be more, be more. To this audience we turn in compassion, making as we do our honest confession of man and his mortal lot some important things we had forgot. The loneliness, the half-light, the confusion and the barrier, time. Wherefore, on man's behalf, we call attention to our Father, oh, our Father. Man is so awfully, terribly alone. Oh, our Father. He has traveled so many generations and in sand digged his miserable and permanent home. Heads grow heavy with fact on fact. Eyes become bleared and blind. Everywhere he scratches and scratches, digs and digs, shreds and shreds, adds stack on stack on stack, born with a scabrous itch that no scratching relieves. Born to this awful searching. Born to bear this mountain humpback in complete learning. Isn't it about time you turned him back? Isn't it time you lifted him out of what never can be? We wait for your answer. What shall man do? What shall we do?
My name is Meg Sherbatscoy, and
I am Harriet's eldest. And I thought I might reminisce a bit about what Mom was doing before she got to Woodstock. She did a lot in that amount of time. I have to take my glasses off, can't see anything, but now I can't see you, so apologies. Mom grew up in Texas with her dad, Ramsey Yelvington, her mom, Louise Dem, which I think many of you knew her, and her sister Margaret. At one time they lived on a small plot. They had a house, a barn, goats, chickens, cows, horses, that kind of thing. And my grandmother, Louise, and my mom would tell me these stories about Mom growing up in that place. And I've told those stories to my children, and I now also tell those stories to kindergarten kids that I work with. And they're called the Harriet stories. Now, one night, when the first one is rat-a-tat-tat, and that was a night, a stormy night, when the goats got out, went through the windows in the kitchen, and basically tore the kitchen apart, terrifying everybody upstairs. There's another one, what was the other one? Oh, Harriet up a tree. Mom went out with her dad on the horse to go check the cattle. She was doing great. He said, don't move. She didn't move until there was a bull who got rather agitated and started to chase her. So she ran till she found a cedar tree to run up, got up there, managed to take it. It wasn't the most comfortable tree to climb, but at least it wasn't a mesquite tree. So she did all that. She was living a country life at that point, and had a great time with it, and telling the stories of it. Ramsey went into World War II. He was in the Army. My mother was going to college. At that time, it was about in 1962. That's when my mother met my father, David Bruce Smith, and they were doing theater. And it was the very start of a renaissance of theater in Texas and in parts of the South. There were incredible writers, playwrights, actors, directors everywhere. And my mother really wanted to be a part of that. So in '62, she met my father while they were working in college, and they married, and then in '63, I popped up. My earliest memories of my mother are she would come up and draw on my face to help me fall asleep. She was 3 times around for everything, all the way around, and tell me the story of Rapunzel. So Mom was trying to get her BA, and my dad was still working. He was an actor, that's what he did. And so I remember the first time I saw my mother in a play, I had to be 3, so it had to be in '66, I guess. And we had gone to the theater that her father had built at Southwest Texas State. And it was in a little box theater, and I walked in, and there were 4 people on this little stage wrapping around, and the lights come up, and there's my mom, and she is gold. Her skin is painted gold. Her hair is gold. What she's wearing is gold. She was just golden. And I watched the play. I don't remember much about it, but I remember my mom being gold. And so she kept working, and she was also trying to get her teacher's license at the same time. So she was working in a lot of different, she was a teacher in Geronimo, she was a teacher in Seguin, she was a teacher in San Antonio. You really should know this. In my first year of life, we moved 3 times. And I counted it up one time, and in all the years before I got married and moved away, we had moved about 43 times. And often in the same town, all around. So, but that's what was going on. And my mom told me, and my siblings probably know this story, that when she was teaching in San Antonio, she was teaching in a school that was kind of on not the right side of the tracks. And she had class, and there was a door at the front of the class, along the wall that went into the hallway, and then there was a door at the back of the class that went into the hallway. And at least once a week while she was there, a few gang members would come in through the front door at the front of the class and just kind of meander through the classroom and then go out the back door, out back into the hall. And Mother's way of dealing with that was to continue writing whatever she could think of on the chalkboard and just let them go through. When, in about '68, my mother and my father got a chance to do the Book of Job with Orrin and Irene Corey. That was a big step up. It was summer theater. And so we went to do that. And also, you know, there was a lot of theater going on. I didn't get to see it all. My father and my mother were in the first production of Grandfather's play, One, which Mother then took a different cast and took a tour through England with One. My mother and my father and my grandmother and my grandfather did readings together. So there was a lot of art going on all the time. So we were in Kentucky for the Book of Job. And during that time there, my mother decided that's where she should stay. But there were a lot of opportunities in Louisville. So she stayed. My father went on touring with an acting crew, with a cast. And Mom started going to the Louisville University, and she wanted to be Lysistrata. There is an audition for Lysistrata. And she wanted to work with this one director. So she took me to the auditions, because at this point she's a single mom, basically. So we go to Lysistrata, and she said she was thinking about it while she was sitting there. I said, "Hey, do you want to be on the stage? You want to be on the stage?" And okay, you know, I was 6. What did I know? My mom was thinking in the back of her head, if I get a part and Meg gets a part, then I don't have to get a babysitter. And I can just come to rehearsals with her in tow. This will be perfect. And I'll get to work with this director. So she auditioned, I auditioned. I was a cute little kid with long curly locks, but I got the part. She didn't get a part. So now Mom had to show up for every rehearsal and every performance as my chaperone. Mom said it wasn't bad. It was fine because she got to sit in the back of the audience and at every rehearsal and write notes about what this director was doing. So it was a win-win for her, no matter what happened. So we did that. Later she did Trojan Women at the university. Also, it was her first production of Trojan Women. And she was working at Louisville High School. And during this time, my parents separated and later got divorced. So it was a short, didn't last really long. And Mom was doing, this is her first gig in a high school, teaching drama. And she was doing things like Bernard the Fox, The Harriet, Our Town, A Cloud of Witnesses, Mark Twain, and this is the first time she put together and the Alice and the Minstrels of Wonderland. And this was also the very first time she took a high school one-act play to competition. I went with her, of course. But we didn't, I don't remember which play was in the competition because we didn't go in the theater. She and I were out in the lobby while the production was going on, and she was pacing. Every once in a while she'd stop and she'd hear something, repeatedly. And I don't really remember, but either right before the audience was going to get to clap, or right as they started to clap, she said, "Okay, we're going home." And we went home. And so we're at home, and Mom's still pacing. And the phone rings, and she answers it, and it's someone on the phone, and she starts jumping up and down and squealing. And she says, we gotta go. So we go down, get in our blue bug, and we're going back across to the theater where they had been competing, and it starts raining. And we get there, and the theater's completely dark. It's all locked up, and there's Mike, the lead in the play, with a trophy in his hand. He gets in the car. I'm relegated to the back. He gets in the car. He goes, "Why did you leave? What were you thinking? You know, I had to do everything. I had to take, I couldn't. And then I got left." And she said, "I just couldn't be there." But the whole time in the car, she'd been bouncing in the seat. We won! The whole time. And so he says, "I need a ride home. Please take me home." So we're going home. And the car stalls. Mom had forgot to put gas in the car. It was raining. Mike got out of the car and started pushing us 2 or 3 blocks in 4-lane traffic, in the middle, in the dark, to a gas station. And then we got Mike home, we went home, and Mom started making phone calls. So that was her first one-act play competition, from what I remember about it. After 2 or 3 years, we moved back to Texas. Mom was helping start work. She was working with her father and many well-known Texas actors, playwrights, directors, and journalists to start what my grandfather wanted, which was a Texas Playwrights Company Incorporated. Mom was one of 2 women in the company. And they were working on that, and at the same time, my mother was going to graduate school, where she did, and that was the first time Mother and I were on stage together in a production. Clockmaker from Cordoba. And we were on stage together. Mother was trying to get through the year. She did Montezuma Valley, Alley. And then she did The Long Gallery, which is actually a play my grandfather wrote about his own family. And during the production of that, my grandfather died. And Mom really kind of lost her way a bit at that point. So she decided to not finish her MA and get a job at Canyon High School in New Braunfels, Texas. Where again, she was doing many of the same plays. That's where she did her first production of Midsummer Night's Dream. And she has did at least 8 of those. So we were doing that, and Mom was going to competition. She was doing drama workshops during the summer. One day there was a radio show talking about how they were going to cut all the teachers' salaries, right? And she wanted to speak on the radio, but she couldn't because they'd recognize her voice and then she might get fired. So she handed me the phone. I was 14, maybe. And she fed me the lines to this guy on this radio show to make her point, which I think she did. Mom really enjoyed our competitions and things, but she started to feel like some of the directors were getting a little uppity. And so she took her own way of dealing with that. All of them were wearing very sleek clothing and dresses and all of that. And Mom put on a t-shirt, clogs, and you know the old pillows that have that blue stripe? A pair of coveralls made out of that. And that's how she got up on stage to accept every award she got in Texas. She was also, other things she was doing, she was also judging plays a lot at that time as well. We were going everywhere all the time. That and New Braunfels, Canyon High School is where she met Chuck. So that's when that started too. She later wanted to start, we moved back to Worrell into my grandfather's house. She wanted to start a gallery, an art gallery. So she put a piece of paper on Michael Schroeder's car saying, Mr. Schroeder, I would really like to meet and talk to you about opening a gallery. This is Harriet Worrell. And that's how that relationship started and continued right to the end. That didn't work out. She ran a community programming for San Marcos Bank. She helped Michael Schroeder with his gallery. And then Mom wanted to try again and start the Texas Playwrights Company Theater in Green, Texas. We also, with Michael, were running a puzzle factory and working in a bar. So we had 3 things going at once. Mom was, again, to promote the theater, we were doing parades through town. We were going to festivals and performing. She got alumni students from the high school to come, and we'd go perform something at a festival, at a new place opening up. And we were doing all kinds of things, medieval fairs, just everything. And it didn't last long. It didn't last long. The theater closed. We closed the bar. Puzzle Factory closed. And then Mom decided to go to Laredo. That was a good place to go. There's Laredo Little Theater. And so we were at the Laredo Little Theater, and this is when I remember Deacon was Puck. Ramsey was some little thing. Yeah. And Temple was there too, on stage. You know, when we were trying to do the theater in Green, we had an outdoor theater one time too. And I nearly lost Temple to the road, but we made it through. I have to say, my mom was a good actor, and I knew she was because I was on stage with her at least 10 times. But one night I really figured out just how good an actress she was, right? So Deacon and Ramsey are in the back of this car, bouncing off the walls. They had to be 5 and 6 or something. I'm sitting in the front with my mom, and Mom's trying to get home. It's dark, it's late, and there go the lights. Mom pulls over. Cop is there. I think Mom was pregnant with a parent. And so the cop comes up and wants to represent me, and she's, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm pregnant, and I'm trying to get home, and she was just sobbing. I've never seen her sob and he goes, okay, ma'am, okay. Please watch your speed limit. I'll give you a warning. It's okay. And so he turns, he's walking, and before he can reach his door, okay, boys, going home. She's a good actress. So we tried it out in Laredo for a couple of years. Didn't quite work out. Went back to Bastrop, where she was the director of the Bastrop Chamber of Commerce and led a protest against Austin, of all places. She was the one who wrote a letter, always good at writing letters for her cause. Bastrop was becoming an artist's haven. There were all kinds of artists there, and they wanted to be taken over. So Mom wrote this letter and sent it to every newspaper in Austin. Then she got everyone in Bastrop up in arms, making signs, getting ready. Then she called all the TV stations and had them there. And then came out, gave this speech, riled everyone up, and they didn't take over Bastrop. Austin left alone after that. My last performance with my mom was while I was in Vermont. Mom had just moved up here, and I was at adult degree program trying to get my BA, and they were looking for performances. And so I called Mom and said, hey, you want to come do a performance with me here? You know, what do you think? She said, well, yeah, we can do Daddy's Women again. You know, instead of 4 of us, it'll just be 2 of us. And so I said, okay, I'll review the script. And she said, well, I'll cut it down. So a couple of weeks later, we get together in the morning, and she's got a script, and we're going through the script and, getting it all worked out. And then that evening, we did a performance together. And that was a good time. That was good. All the Daddy's women were all the women from his plays that actually were family members. So, Mother's art was hers. She was creative. She had stamina beyond belief. But she depended on her theater community to support her and make her imaginings come to fruition. Mother was always looking over the horizon for the next thing. There's always that horizon to go through. And the last, after that last time, she went over the horizon, visited me in Vermont, thought, and moved here about 6 months later. And found her theater community. Again, she had lost the one in Texas long ago with her father, but found it again here. And she loved it. She loved what she was doing. And I appreciate everyone who has ever helped her reach her goals. She was an actress, a director, a playwright, a mother, a grandmother, and a very special woman.
Let's sing together, Camping in Canaan's Land.
I was really tempted to trip or something on the way up there, fall. It's really hard not to do that, sorry. I am the shorter version of Jordan. I'm quieter than him too, so I need to use the microphone. I have been asked to read some portions of The Little Prince. And I'll go ahead and do that. I hope that as you're hearing some of these little snippets from this story that you'll take a little bit of time to digest them and maybe think and be present in your own life. And just take a moment of silence to recognize the spectrum of emotions that are present in this room. So, here we go. The Little Prince follows the adventures of a small boy prince who travels from his home asteroid to other asteroids and eventually Earth. As he travels, he has interactions with a wide variety of characters representing different aspects of the human condition. The Little Prince draws unflattering portraits of grown-ups as being hopelessly narrow-minded. In contrast, children come to wisdom through open-mindedness and a willingness to explore the world around them and with themselves. Here are some quotes that I'd like to share from this story. All grown-ups were once children, but only few of them remember it. I am who I am, and I have the need to be. The Little Prince says, "Where are the people? It's a little lonely in the desert." And then the snake says, "It is lonely when you're among people too." It is such a mysterious place, the land of tears. But eyes are blind. You have to look with the heart. The most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched. They are felt with the heart. And this is the last little quote I'd like to share. It's a conversation the Little Prince has with a fox. He says, the fox says, "And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." I want to thank the Worrells for inviting me to do this. If Harriet was here and she knew I hadn't read The Little Prince, she would be really mad. So I spent all night reading The Little Prince. So I have some context, right? And, but there's some beautiful things in here. There were some really beautiful things in here. And it made me escape into that land of wonder that I think Harriet was really trying to create in this space. And that kind of, that art, that land of, I call it the land of wonder because at times it felt like we were not here on this plane. So I'm appreciative of that opportunity and I'm glad to be back here. Thank you.
Harriet asked that this memorial service include a scripture reading about life and art. So hear these words adapted from Exodus chapter 35, verses 31 to 34. "And God has filled her with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and understanding, in knowledge and all manner of workmanship, to design artistic works, to work in gold and silver and bronze, in cutting jewels for setting, in carving wood, and to work in all manner of artistic workmanship. And God has given her the ability to teach others." I suspect that all of us, for every one of us here, Harriet Worrell has been a teacher. Last week, as I sat in the White House on the Upper Road in Bridgewater Corners with Meg and Deacon, Ramsey and Noel, Perrin and Jeff, Temple and Teresa and Michael. As the conversation evolved, I felt a bit like I was in a play. Not that the lines were rehearsed or the action was staged, but that there was a story to tell and interesting characters to share it, and there was meaning to make. I can't begin to tell you all the memories they shared about their mother and friend. I can't convey the ways they built upon one another's stories, corrected one another's memories, or developed one another's interpretations. If it was Harriet and Chuck's desire to nurture 5 strong, independent, unique individuals who love and respect and enjoy one another, they were most successful. Well done. Maybe, I think, the best way to reflect on Harriet's life is to explore its paradoxes. Harriet integrated opposites. Not a life of contradictions, but a life lived in the tension between different poles. She lived in this energy between stage left and stage right. One of those tensions, of course, is geographical, between Texas and Vermont. Harriet May was born in Bean County, Texas, the second child of Louise Durham and Leonard Ramsey Yelvington. And Harriet loved being a Texan. The first visual image that I have of Harriet is one she shared with her Yo students of herself as a child, carrying a leather whip and killing the rattlesnakes that got into the house that her mother was afraid to kill. Meg's nodding, so it's true. I thought maybe it was part of her myth-making of Texas. Harriet has deep roots in rural Texas, where roads and theater buildings at Baylor and Southwest Texas University are named after her family members. And I think Meg has done a beautiful job at describing that Texas life that Harriet lived to us. And yet, Harriet left Texas. She did not take root there. Deacon said, after Harriet's beloved father died, she lost her center. And she and her family moved around a lot, trying to find a center. Meg, as you heard, said that she herself moved 43 times, and Deacon counted 36 moves, and Temple stopped counting at 12 moves before he was 18. There was a lot of packing and unpacking and a lot of chaos. When they moved to Vermont, Woodstock embraced them. Temple said the community here met her. They got her. Their family had stability here like no other time or place in their lives. They at first took survival jobs. Harriet was a docent at Billings Farms. She drove a student to and from school in Montpelier, which is how she learned to drive in the snow. She got a good theater gig at the Opera House in White River Junction, and she left when she had to compromise her art. She left, Temple said, because she didn't like making a living just toiling. Chuck had described it as, she just quits. But she wanted to manifest her clear vision. And she created a space to do that here in Woodstock, in her Yo theater program. Here, she had agency to develop and nurture the kind of innovative theater that she dreamed of. Here in this program, she could extend theater to places that it would not otherwise have reached. She brought Yo theater players to the Woodstock Inn to be the medieval king and queen at the dinner theater. And she brought the inn's wassail weekend guests here to the high school plays. And she extended theater within the high school, beyond the regular drama students, by recruiting musicians from the band and athletes from the sports teams. She said, you can't produce a Hamlet if you don't have a Hamlet. And so sometimes she had to go out and recruit her Hamlet. She was innovative. She chose plays not expected from high school performers. She adapted some plays in gender-bending ways. She directed a female King Lear, and Al had adventures in Wonderland. She created a Japanese kabuki interpretation of Medea. Harriet finally found her center in theater in Woodstock, Vermont. She did continue to watch Fixer Upper, the home renovation reality show based in Waco, Texas, just to get real live glimpses of Waco. So she was still living in the tension. Perhaps the most obvious paradox in Harriet's life is the tension between her warmth and her scariness. Harriet said of herself, "You either respect me or you're terrified of me." And as Teresa said, for some of us, it was a bit of both. Harriet demanded excellence. She didn't suffer fools. She was clear-sighted and she was honest about what she saw. Her play rehearsals sometimes went to midnight, and school administrators were too respectful or too intimidated. She developed a theater department here in the era when Woodstock High School athletics were at their peak, when 85% of students played a varsity sport, and yet her theater program was considered the most rigorous extracurricular activity. When an athlete was recruited for a part in one of her plays, they would be awed by what was demanded of them in that space. As Deacon said, a lot of Yo theater players graduated with an advanced work ethic. And some students were simply too scared of her to try theater at all. She was tough. And yet she was also known for being a champion of second chances, for accepting and welcoming the outsider, for forgiving. Ramsey knew her as a safe person that he could talk with, for sound advice, with no judgment, an excellent listener. He said, "Please make sure you also say she was a loving mother. She came to all of my games." She was a loving friend. Michael, her artist friend and set designer, was embraced as family. The Larsons, Cheryl and Steve, and their 5 children were part of her DNA. Another paradox was the tension between fearless Harriet and intimidated Harriet. She was aware of having moved from rural Texas to the intimidating Northeast, formidable New England, and she felt she had to prove herself every day. She was not hired at Woodstock as a teacher. She was an artist in residence and had to raise her own salary through grant writing. She was an excellent grant writer, but she never took her precarious position for granted. And yet, she was essentially fearless. She chose scripts fearlessly. She taught young people fearlessly. Taking students to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland and to theater contests all across the country was fearless. I witnessed her bravery firsthand when I went along as a parent chaperone to New York City, when I went along I think it was 2015, when Chuck was no longer able to be a driver. Harriet took 10 young Woodstock High School students to see a couple of plays on Broadway and one at Yale Repertory Theater. That meant a lot of public transportation and many blocks on crowded city sidewalks. Conversations while sitting next to Harriet were also brave. She was brave in conversation. She told me something that I'm sure she had learned from growing up in a family that was stuffed full of clergy. She said, "You and I are in the same work. We both are in the business of trying to nurture a community around telling stories. Stories that try to make meaning in a world of meaninglessness." I think that's a brave thing to say. Another tension or paradox in Harriet's life was around money. She was aware of how many brilliant artistic ventures that she'd imagined did not thrive because of lack of finances. As Temple said, money was not her friend. She hated financial stresses. She tried working with corporations, taking her speed coursework to businesses, and adults loved her, but they couldn't get over themselves. I think Michael described it best when he said adults so often just couldn't relax into the process. And yet she was able to ask for money and to receive it. She was an excellent advocate for theater. She was only turned down once for a grant request, and that was compensated for by another grant that she received without applying for it. She simply wrote a heartfelt thank you letter to Fund for Teachers, and they said, let's give this woman some money. And Harriet was generous with her own money. I remember her saying to the O students on that New York trip when they went to their hotel rooms at night, remember to put $1 on your pillow when you leave in the morning. Harriet embodied the paradox of the artist as parent, the tension between those two roles. She gave her life to teaching and theater, and her kids said that the reality of that sometimes meant that if they wanted to spend time with their parents, they had to be in a theater. Ramsey said, we grew up in theaters and schools after hours. We got into mischief, places that we shouldn't have been. We broke into soda machines. Deacon said that Harriet saw everything through an artist's lens, including parenting and domesticity. He attributes his affinity for old school office equipment to those late nights in school offices, stapling hundreds of pages of scripts together. Temple said she could have gone in so many different directions. She could have been an actor, she could have been a writer, but she chose to be a mom and a creator of a theater community. And she modeled the kind of person that she wanted her children to become. Independent, strong, unique, and creative. Temple said, sure, she would have loved it if we had gone to theater, but what she really wanted was for us to follow our passions, to be happy. A final paradox came at the end of her life when Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia began to wrap its silent tentacles both around her and Chuck. Temple called it colossally unfair. They were living in that White House, their most consistent life, the most stability in a home that they had ever had. And first Chuck and then Harriet began to be impacted by Parkinson's disease. Perrin came to live with them and to be supportive. And when she moved out, Ramsey and Noelle and Colt moved in. Noelle left her job to be a full-time caregiver. Temple said it most succinctly when he said, their caregiving saved us from being traumatized. And we are so very, very grateful. We will never be able to repay them. And yet, those who lived with Chuck and Harriet describe it not as a trauma or even as caregiving, but as a precious gift. Perrin, who moved in first, recalled watching old black and white classic movies, crying at Kennedy Center Awards, enjoying singing, and putting on some old music and leaving the room and coming back to find Chuck and Harriet slow dancing. Trauma is such an honest and stark word to use of the effects of this debilitating disease. And so I would like to close with the other side of this paradox from Noelle, who described these last years with Chuck and Harriet. Noelle said that she and Ramsey had first connected over having parents who worked in theater, so she understood Harriet. Harriet welcomed her children's partners as part of the family. Noelle had first known Harriet as a hard worker from living across the street from the high school and seeing those lights on in the Yo Theater late at night. Yes, Harriet could be intimidating, but Noelle would slip in with food for her and Chuck, and Harriet would barely look away from the script or the stage. But when the family moved in to Chuck and Harriet's house with them, when they and Colt, who had been born on Chuck and Harriet's wedding anniversary, it was special, she said, to see another side, a softer side of Harriet emerging. She said, there is a unique third generation energy that develops. And Noelle saw Harriet's unique qualities become reflected in their child. Her compassionate heart was reflected in Colt. His young soul was mirroring her old soul. He would climb into bed with her and say, "Grimky, scooch over." Harriet never used diminutive names with him, nothing like sweetie pie or honey bunch. She used respectful adult words with Colt, like dear heart and dear one. When he showed her something, she would pronounce it glorious. And so now, Noelle enjoys hearing this little 3-year-old use Harriet's beautiful old soul words. Noelle said, "What I want you to understand is that there was so much joy in this house." And to that, Temple replied, "Well done." Both poles are true. The colossal unfairness of the trauma of the diseases and the joy of being shaped by Harriet's life and art. To all of you, you 5 unique, strong, independent, creative offspring who embody in your lives what your 2 strong, creative parents nurtured. Well done.
In the tradition of so many evenings of the theater of Harriet Worrell, we will now take a brief intermission.